Hi everyone, my name's Peter from Prime Finance. In this episode, I speak with Victor Velgush from Refined Real Estate. Victor is a successful business person. He's been in the industry for over 20 years, has a lot of knowledge, and we spoke about everything from delayed gratification to the mindset of success to the importance of cutting out people who aren't on Team U. I really enjoyed the conversation. I hope you do too. Thanks for listening. Firstly, I'd just like to say thank you very much for having me in your office today to have a little bit of a chat. I think your office is probably the coolest office I've ever been in. So I'm going to open with a question about some of your decor. What's your most significant personal object that you've got in your office? What's the thing that means the most to you?
Yes, thanks, Peter. And yeah, great to be on. Appreciate it. I've just accumulated this. I've been sitting in the same office for 18 years, and I've slowly gathered things that mean things to me. So when I walk in here, I do feel particularly comfortable. It's not to everyone's taste, but I do love it. But yeah, a bit of history is that the reason I've ended up in this office, it is when this company started, our entire office for the whole company was the same size as my current office. So I do feel to be opulent, but you know, I do have a plausible defense, and my defense is that unfortunately this was my mum's office, so she was my inspiration, you know, and very successful. And when she was passing away, she actually her wish was for me to have her office. So I ended up, you know, poor me, I've had to be in this amazing office, and so the answer to your question is because of that, because I owe all that to her. There's a few items here that were left over from when it was her office, and you know, including there's a salt lamp and there's a few other you know, pieces of art that I think that I value the most.
Yeah, that's nice. So we've had some previous discussions, and your mum's come up a bit. So it sounds like she's a bit of an inspiration to you, and she's also a property investor as well. What have you learned? Why don't you tell us a little bit about her and some of the lessons you might have learned from her?
Yeah, sure. So I'll give you a condensed history. In that immigrant family, came over 1979 from the former Soviet Union. They only allowed $100 per person, 100 rubles, sorry, which is worth about like maybe $5 a person.
That's still like communist Russia, right?
Yeah, well, it is, except now it's all separate countries.
Yes.
So we're from Ukraine.
Okay.
Back then it was all one country. Everyone spoke one language.
Yep.
It was 70 different nations as the Soviet Union. So now, Russia's separate. Now they're bombing Ukraine, right? So but before, like, they fought wars together. They were one country anyway. So basically came over with no money. My mum was a concert pianist and music teacher. Dad's engineer, which are very well-regarded professions back in communist Soviet Union. Here, neither of them could speak English, so they both went to the bottom of the pile and started from scratch. And no money, no language, didn't understand the culture. It was, you know, interesting start. And 3 young kids. You know, I was 7 at that time, and basically, Mum went to a real estate course, and it was called something like buying property with no money. And that's the one for her because she had no money.
Yeah, okay.
So it was perfect.
Makes sense.
It was perfect,
yeah.
Right? And they taught. I didn't go to the course, but they sold this course, and it was a lot of money for her back then. So she went around. She found 6 other people, and they all chipped in. They bought one together, and it was tapes, which we don't have anymore.
Yeah.
They had these plastic folders, and they would just take the tapes, and then they'd get together once every few weeks and swap tapes over.
Yeah.
You listen to this one, and they'll discuss it, right? Anyway, and it was things like, you know, when they bought a property, they'd offer to do the lawns, and they'd do the some house, and
they support each other, right?
No. Sorry, the whole no money thing was how to finance it with no money, but then how to hold on to it with low income. And my dad was in a slight depression. He ended up coming good, but Mum really had no cash flow, so she had to really make the properties cash flow. So they did extra things in the properties, like they were servicing them, they were doing gardening, they were supplying furniture, linen, whatever they could to get more money out of the tenants. But yeah, she ended up, you know, doing very, very well, and owning a lot of property. And obviously, you know, as a kid, I saw 2 things. I saw how hard life was, like tough struggle, and saw the difference between us, couldn't afford a lot of things, and seeing people rolling around in Mercedes Benz and in the middle of the day looking like they've made it. And it made me, I guess some of that formed me.
Yeah.
But yeah, she came out as a champion, as a victor, and she made it and did very well in the end.
So a lot of what we see here today in this beautiful office is attributable to your mum.
Well, I think my attitude in life and my belief, like me, and having the confidence is attributable to a lot of it to my mum. His dad was a, engineer, conservative.
Yeah.
He would never have done anything entrepreneurial, like invest in anything.
Yeah.
So so she definitely was the person that powered that.
Yeah.
And then obviously I was able to learn from that and follow in those footsteps to some degree.
Yeah. Well done. Well done. That's nice. So a little bit about your bio, and correct me if any of this is wrong. Okay. So you're the director and principal sales agent of Refined Homes, successful businessman, real estate agent, auctioneer, developer, former president of Society of Auctioneers, investor, and involved in a lot of charity events as well. That's a lot. Have I missed anything?
I'm
sure I have.
I've got my 20th wedding anniversary in a couple of weeks. So
nice.
So husband and father of three. My oldest daughter just started university. She's finished school last year. So you're that's obviously a major thing.
So throughout all of that, you would have experienced a lot of challenge, a lot of setbacks. When you do experience those things, how do you overcome them? What's your mindset towards helping you overcome, challenge?
I actually find, and I am too busy, genuinely, and I find that when I stop one thing, something else, I get asked to do something else, and I jump on that. So I end up, I'm always forever too busy. But in a way, that actually has a positive effect in that I've got no time to dwell on any one thing because I've got too many other things going on. I've got, 20 plus staff. I do have developments. I've got all these things going on. So if one thing's down, I just deal with it, and then I've got to handle all the other things. So I can't just sit there moping about one thing. Which is kind of
keeping your mind active, keeping it busy. Because I love this. There's a quote, I think it's from the Bible, said, idle hands are the devil's plaything, right? So it's like if you've got time on your hands, you're going to find a way to waste it or get up to something that is not productive, right?
Yeah.
So just keeping yourself occupied, giving yourself something to do keeps you in the right frame of mind and on track.
Yeah, and I think having, like, bouncing off of negative things and working toward other positive things.
Yeah.
So that's, it's like the falling off the horse, get back on.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. So, basically that's what I found works for me is I've got enough other things going on that almost no one thing can really take center stage and knock me off of being positive because I've got to save that energy for all other things.
100%. So positivity and mindset. So you obviously have to save that for all of the things that you got to do. Where do you get your motivation and positivity from? Where do you draw inspiration from?
Look, I've got to tell you that I genuinely believe that a lot of it came from when I was a teenager, a young age, and again back a little bit to my mother. When I was 14, she flew me to Western Australia, and there was a 3-day course. So it's a cuckoo clock, and
Cuckoo.
I
have never seen one of those in real life.
The
bird actually just came out.
The bird came out. It's a real one. It's a real one. Yeah. So that's just like some fun stuff, and I very much focus. And to me, like if it's funny, I love it. But yeah, basically, it was a 4-day course, and it was called The Power of One, with a guy called Gary Capelli. I don't even know if he's around anymore, but he just sat us down. He said, "Next 3 days, you're going to turn your eyeballs inside out, and you're going to work out how you tick." Yeah. And I was 14, right? So I wouldn't have ever thought of doing that.
How did you? Oh, your mum.
Yeah, she grabbed me. She took me there.
Jeez,
right.
Okay.
Then I remember walking down the street, and it was actually Stonehouse Avenue, not far from here. It's where I grew up, not far from here. And there was like this dark green Mercedes E-Class. I remember vividly, with a tan interior. And the best car I'd ever seen in my life pretty much was a Holden Commodore. Yeah. And that was great. Loved that, right? And this guy had all the windows down. It was a warm day. The music was going. And I thought, like, how do you do that? Just as a kid, I think I must have been 12 years old or something.
Yeah.
And then I started reading books, trying to learn about it.
So education has played a big part in.
For me, it
your
has. I mean,
development?
yeah, absolutely. Some guidance and leadership from my mum,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah.
But also that triggered me to actually read and learn. And I ended up doing a commerce degree thinking I'd learn about money.
Yeah.
In actual fact, it didn't play that as much as it's nice to have a degree and you feel like you can stand up a bit straighter in some way.
Yeah, yeah.
It didn't really play a big part in the
That's
creation.
really interesting because that's like a common theme that we're hearing a lot about lately. And that's like, oh, you don't need to go to uni to be successful. You can learn a lot from real life or from teaching yourself. What are your thoughts on that?
100%. You don't need to go to uni. It just sometimes it's self-belief helps you then try and succeed. Yeah. And maybe going to uni makes you feel like, oh, maybe I'm one of the people who's meant to be successful. But beyond that, it doesn't teach you much. There's nothing you can't learn in 3 years of doing something that you would have learned in uni about that. You know, so
without the debt, right?
Man, I hated uni. Yeah. I only finished it because I just didn't want to have that cross on my on my schedule saying I failed that and dropped out. Because I had to force myself. I felt like I was a hamster running in a wheel where you're running, but you're going nowhere. I just couldn't wait to get onto the real life and actually, hit the road.
Yeah. So you mentioned self-belief, right? It's important to have self-belief, and that if you have that, then it's easier to achieve your goals. What advice would you give to young people to help them develop self-belief, right? Because I see that a lot, obviously with my background in teaching and helping young people in property, they don't actually believe that they can buy a property, or they don't believe that they can be successful.
Yeah.
So developing self-belief is so important. How would you support kids?
Yeah. So look, I'll start by saying this, and that is that if you believe you can or you believe you can't, you're right. So if you think you can't, you won't try, and you definitely can't. So, if you're around the people who can't, and there's another saying I love, which is like, the people getting it done shouldn't let the people who believe it can't be done get in the way.
I like that one.
And that's, so really you got to decide, are you on the camp, it can happen, or are you going to join the camp that it can't? And when I started this business, I had people that loved me, that cared about me, said to me, Victor, don't do it. There's too many people in real estate. It's overcrowded. It's what was the word I heard just before?
Saturated.
Saturated, right?
Saturated.
Especially in Glenelg, there's too many. Are you kidding? And so I guess if I believed that, I wouldn't have done it. So, and I've got another thing in my mind, which is like, there's always room for the best. That's what I believe. So therefore, that doesn't matter to me, because I believe there's always room for the best. So as long as I can make myself the best, and that's why I refined, because we're refining. Refining doesn't mean we're not saying we're the greatest. We're saying we're improving. We're refining.
Yeah.
Therefore, we're better this year than we were last year. We're going to be better next year still. So if you're not refining, eventually we're going to be better than you.
Yeah. So it's like growth is a continual process, right?
Exactly.
It's not something that you just, okay, yeah, I've got a successful company. We're just going to keep doing what we've always done. It's always like, how do I make it better?
And if I wanted that, I would have bought a franchise. They give you a manual, you follow the manual, and you're successful.
Yeah.
But I didn't like that. I like the idea of let's evolve, let's grow, let's discover, let's work out what is the best way to do it. And if that changes next year, we're going to change.
Yeah.
Rather than like, I know you have to follow the manual, because if you go off the manual, you might fail.
Yeah.
Because that book works. That doesn't excite me.
Yeah.
But back to your
cookie
question.
cutter straight approach.
Yeah. I feel like I'm dead inside. As soon as you make me follow that, I'm dying. But you asked me a different question. You said for young people, about belief,
self-belief. Yeah.
Look,
confidence.
I've got 3 kids, so I'm asking myself that question. How do I make sure they do it? Because for me, I was sort of, I knew if it was going to be, it's up to me. I had to make it work. I worried that they won't have that same level of desperation that I had.
Yeah. That hunger, that
drive,
drive,
and then you overshoot. Yes. You end up doing really well, right?
Yeah.
But if you think you've made it, you relax. You end up undershooting and end up in the gutter somewhere or whatever. That's probably an overstatement. But in any case, so point is that I think you've got to find something that you love, you're passionate about, focus on it, and do it long enough, and don't quit for long enough that you succeed. Yeah. And that gives you confidence, and then you do the next thing. So I really believe, and when I interview people here, I'm looking for a line, and I don't mind if it's playing marbles or chess or running or whatever. I'm looking for some kind of a progression of achievement where they build self-belief, because it does build slowly through having underlying successes that make you feel like, actually, I'm okay. I kicked the goal in soccer.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and everyone applauded for me. So it's a building thing.
Yeah, and that's cool how, like when you just said that when you're looking for people to work for you, what you're looking for in them that builds success or that self-belief. Because I believe that, that self-belief is transferable. Like you might be really good at soccer, or you might be really good at, going to the gym, pump, whatever it is, right? But you might not necessarily have the self-belief in, can I make it as a real estate agent? Can I make it as a property investor? Can I make it, but typically if you believe in yourself enough in one area, that usually transfers over, or can transfer over.
Absolutely.
Because the hard work that you had to put into to become a good soccer player or whatever, you've got that skill set, right? So that sort of leads me to the next thing I was going to ask is when you do employ people, and I would assume, correct me if I'm wrong, but, some of your staff would be younger, maybe, under 30, 25, 27.
Of course.
What do you look for in them in terms of work ethic, right? So, yeah, we'll leave it at that. Work ethic.
Yeah. So look, I'm more looking for where they want to end up. So I kind of asked them in different ways to work out where their vision for life is. Because what I'm looking for there is their vision for life truly aligned with where they're going to end up in this industry, in this business, in this company? If it's not, there's no point because both of us are going to be unhappy, number one. So I've got questions around that. And then I try and work out their willingness to actually do it. Because a lot of people say, I want this and I want that and I would like this. But it's only a conditional upon not having to work too hard, upon it not disturbing their lifestyle, upon being able to party, 4 nights a week, upon and all the upons, all the pretty much it's going to be impossible for them to succeed because all those things will always take precedence. So I am looking for their genuine desire to fulfill their own dream, because I know that I don't believe I can motivate anybody to fulfill my dream. But if I can show them a path to get to their dream within my structure and it aligns with their actual real dream, and they actually want it bad enough to do it, nothing will stop them. I definitely can show them. So
sort of that self-motivation thing. So that it has to be, that their goal has to be valuable enough to them to be self-motivated, because
it has to be real. It has to be real because the amount of contact that we have with our people is very limited compared to the amount of time they got on their own. Yeah. So if they can show, for a few hours a week, they can show us great face here and then go off and do whatever they do that's unproductive. I'm not going to go all those things, but even just play video games, which I like video games, but if you're playing 18 hours nonstop, it's not going to serve you very well, in life as you want to progress. So my point is that it's a matter of what they genuinely want, because they have to do it. Success is what happens when no one's looking. Yeah. When they're not in the office dressed up and saying I'm doing great.
When you're grinding at home behind the computer,
exactly,
11:30 at night, 1 a.m. Yeah,
that's the passion doesn't come in. True success doesn't happen. And real estate is way too competitive for someone who's not truly passionate, doesn't want to do the work, is pretending to make it. That if they can't, because we do get calls. You're in the middle of a social. I've had calls at Christmas, on my birthday, and someone wants to see a house. You get out of your bathers if you're in the pool. You just go. You put your suit on, and if you're not passionate, you're going to hate that. Definitely. If you're passionate, I'm excited. Yeah.
And that's also an element of self-discipline as well. It's right. It's, I've got to do this regardless of what situation I'm in at the moment. This is my job. I've got to get it done. And that's really important. I want to break it up. I want to play a quick game with you. All right. We're going to do a quick fire round. So I'm going to say a word or a phrase, and whatever pops into your head when you hear it, just blurt it out.
Gosh, right? That's dangerous, Peter.
Yeah. I know.
I have to not edit. I mean, I've been known to say things that,
That's cool. We can edit.
We'll work it out. Okay.
All right.
Good.
Okay. If your work ethic had a theme song, what would it be?
Rocky, Eye of a Tiger.
Get rich quick schemes.
The opposite.
Your happy place.
A jacuzzi overlooking the ocean.
Pet peeve.
What's that?
Pet peeve.
People using language badly, like not people English speaking people who don't speak English properly.
Very good. Okay, favorite quote and why?
Favorite quote. I've got to calm myself down to say it because it's not a quick answer, but it's on my Facebook under my thing. It just says that one will only believe what they first believe to be believable, and there's no point arguing over irreconcilable irreducibilities. And why? Because there's a lot of truth to that. If people believe something already, they just won't believe that something that's different. You have to actually be open to a new belief. So that's kind of what it says. But it's a really good one to get people to think about the fact that they're more closed than they realize.
I have to think a lot just to understand.
Exactly. Or even say it.
Even say it. That's right. Monday morning.
Excited.
Office hours.
As much as possible. Love my office.
Favorite motivational song?
It is Life Will Never Be the Same.
And
I don't even know who sings it back. You just type it in. Life will never be the same.
Done. We'll play it at the end. The first word that comes to mind when you think about dealing with real estate agents?
Caution. Caution.
Well done. Thank you very much for that. That's cool. All right. So I want to talk about fear, anxiety. A lot of young people that I speak to, they tell me that it's a lot of money to get started in property. They don't have it. They're afraid of parting with any money that they do have. What advice would you give to young people who might be scared to take that step into the residential property market?
Yeah. So even now I can relate, like even this many years on, I remember how afraid I was when I bought my first property. So I had 3 jobs. I was 19 years old. The jobs were like basic jobs, Hungry Jacks, running a service station. Like they weren't any high profile jobs, but I'd saved some money. Back then it was $30,000, which we're talking about 30 years ago. So it's maybe like saving 80,000 now. It's quite a big savings. I was a good saver. But yeah, my mum pushed me and said, you have to buy a property. Because I was feeling pretty comfortable with myself. I had all this money in the bank. And I was feeling very secure. All of a sudden, I'm feeling completely petrified, insecure. And I used to call it the black hole because all my savings disappeared. I never had any money in the bank, and it looked like the mortgage was sucking it all. So I can feel the fear was there. And at 19, I thought, I don't want to go bankrupt at 19. So I was working really, really hard, running away from like being bankrupt. So the fear is definitely there. And I think what helps is being around other people who are doing it. Because if you're, back to my point earlier, if you believe you can or you believe you can't, you're right.
Yeah.
So if you get around people who are doing it, you kind of get carried with that, and you can borrow some of their confidence, you can borrow some of their courage.
Yeah.
And because all of us, you look at someone and they're successful, you think, wow, so bulletproof, and that's why he's successful. Reality is, most of the time, like, you're packing it. You feel you're failing. You're scared. You feel alone. You feel like oh my God, something horrible is going to happen to me. We all have those same inner doubts and thoughts. It's a matter of 2 things. One is pushing, deciding I'm going to push through this decision, right? It's like, do I jump or not jump? You decide I'm going to jump, right?
Red pill, blue pill, right?
Yeah, and the other one is, this is just my experience, is having people around you who say that you can. Because the hardest thing for me is having people protect me. I was saying to you about starting my business. Yeah. Your people you love, they love you. They want to keep you safe. Really safe, right? How do you keep you safe? Stop you from taking risks. So you're going to be safe, but you're not going to be successful. So sometimes you got to, and Gary Capelli, back to this course in Perth, right? He said to us something dramatic. I did it halfway. He said, for 1 year, cut off everyone that you know. And make your decisions about how you're going to change your life, and do them for a year, and then decide who you're going to bring back into your life. Freaking scary when you actually think about doing that. People and he said, if you can't cut them off because your parents, he said, just spend minimal time with them. I did it for 6 months. Yeah. And it's amazing because people who love you stop you changing. They keep you just the same.
Yeah.
It's a pretty profound thing.
I'm really glad you brought that up because I was going to ask you about mentors, and there's a quote that I love. It says, show me your future and I'll show me your friends and I'll show you your future, right? So having the right type of people around you, for me, is really important. So you mentioned distancing yourself from certain people. How difficult was that for you to do?
Look, I'm strong family values, value friendship very highly. It was very, very hard, but I did do it for 6 months. And when I say you can still take a phone call, but keep it short, be too busy to catch up, just spend minimal time and spend maximum time with the direction you're going in and who you want to be spending time with. So you actually consciously, as you said, Peter, it's all about who you spend most of your time with is who you become. And which books you read, it's your environment. You become your environment. So you've got to consciously create that environment for success.
Yeah, and environment is not just who you hang around, right? Environment is like what music you listen to,
That's right.
what films you watch on TV, what books you read. It's everything. It's what's going into your mind.
That's right. Even the food you eat.
Food you eat, yeah, 100%. How you spend your pastimes. One thing that I heard that from someone I was speaking to the other day is that he doesn't know where to find people to mentor him, doesn't know where to find people who have achieved what he is trying to achieve. And because of that, he's got no one to sort of look to. What advice would you give to people who might be in that situation?
Yeah, look, there's an old, Confucian saying, which is, when the student is ready, the master appears. And there's another more practical thing that most people relate to is that if you buy a yellow Mini, you'll start seeing other Minis around, and you'll start realizing there's actually another yellow Mini around. If you didn't buy one, you'll never see any. So I think if you make a true decision and you actually get on course and you start reaching out, start looking, for the what literature can I read, what course can I do? I mean, there's investing courses at Adelaide TAFE. There's different things you can do. You will find that if you start putting yourself there, the environment will appear, and those similar people, that circle will start to form. So you just got to get your mindset right, and it'll actually, like gravity, it'll pull the rest together.
So, and really, what I'm getting out of that is the onus is on the individual first to take that step, right? Like first step.
Because we've all got excuses, right? And I gave you a story about a young man who lost his father at 8 years old, and he could just say, look, I don't have a mentor, and I have this, and therefore that's why I'm like this. So we've all got a story that could tell us why we haven't made it, but it's up to us. We're adults. We can create our own story. If you're 18 plus, you're in charge of your future story.
Yeah. So put the excuses aside and get out of the comfort zone, right?
I think don't allow yourself to rest back on the excuses on that story, because it's a very comfortable place to be.
Yes.
Say, hey, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. And I guess I drew inspiration from my mother, who came here, couldn't drive a car, couldn't speak English, was short, was not in any way, didn't seem like someone who could achieve anything. And yet just from the inside out ended up doing very, very well. And it just comes from the inside out.
Yeah. I want to talk about financing and budgeting and sort of like wasting money on crap, right? Because a lot of the kids that I've worked with, I see them buying things like $300 sneakers, the latest iPhones, they're like a couple grand or whatever they are. And I'm thinking, this is thousands of dollars that you could be saving or, putting away for investment, whatever, right? What's your advice to young people on spending habits? And maybe even tell us a little bit about what you were like at that age too.
Yeah. So there's two things I'll say to you. Number one is that the best predictor of if a kid's going to be successful in life, we're talking about sports, career, health, and wellness and money, is you can take them when they're 7 years old and give them a test aligned to this, and that is, and you can look it up, the marshmallow test.
Yeah, I've done this with my kids.
Right,
yes.
right.
Yeah,
do you want one marshmallow now or two next week? If the kid says, I'll take one now, you got some work to do. Yeah. And unfortunately, a lot of us have carried that through into adulthood, and we're taking the pleasure now versus having happiness and success later. So that's the first thing I'd say to you. Is
that delayed gratification.
The delayed gratification. It's all about that. It's like that with your diet, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like that with your work. You got to put the hard work in now, get the reward later. Yeah. In business, investing, 1,000,000% like that. So that's number one. Is you've got to be willing to take the delayed gratification. Yeah. And just give me the question one more time.
So question was, what advice would you give to young people who you might see spending money on crap, basically.
Yes. And number two, I'll tell you that for me, I got cured very easily, and that is I was forced to buy a house.
Yeah.
And that cured my propensity to spend. So I can't argue, I can't answer what I would have done had I not been forced to do that. So in a way, I got thrown in the deep end, I had to swim, right?
Yeah.
And what I was experiencing at the time is a lot of my friends were getting their first jobs, getting incomes, getting cool apartments in town, buying, you'll laugh, 42-inch LCD TVs, which were $6,000 at the time.
Yeah, I remember those plasmas.
42, right? It was huge. Now 42 is a joke, right?
Yeah.
That's a screen in your car almost, right? I got a 14-inch screen in my car. So, and they're buying motorbikes and parachutes and doing all this cool stuff, right? And I wasn't, because all my money was being sucked into the black hole. But that's the delayed gratification. And then out the other end, I look at those same people. They're still driving that same car and the same motorbike because they can't afford a new one because they blew their money early, or they got into debt early, and therefore they pretty much took the future, borrowed from it, and got it now. Like was it higher purchase? What is it where you buy now, pay later?
Yeah, exactly that.
They're doing that with their life, right? You're using it now, and they're going to pay later. But unfortunately, what it means is life's going to be terrible later because you're taking it now. So what I'd say is that if there's a secret, you got to. This is as simple as this. Is the most simple formula I can give you from my 4-year economics degree. Is work out, get your income as best you can, high as you can, get your expenditure, as low as you can, get the middle bit and invest it, and hold and hold and hold. If anyone saw Gladiator in the first scene, the savages are running at him, running at the army, and the army just wants to fire, and he's saying, hold, and it's like, looks painful, looks like they're on them. And then finally, when they're meters away, he says, unleash hell, Not the best example, but I love that scene.
Yeah, but it sort of embodies discipline.
Yeah, you hold. You don't spend, right? You don't spend. And you invest. You let the tree, and I always talk about, nurture the goose, grow the goose, and then eat the golden eggs, get the golden eggs. Because guess what? There'll be another one tomorrow. But if you eat the goose, there's never any golden eggs ever again. Finished. So in a way, I would encapsulate it as that. If I had to give a message, it's like, whatever is your goose, grow the goose. I'm not saying it has to be property. Whatever the investment vehicle is that's going to give you your future happiness and your future security and your future options in life and your ability to have a better life and give one of my motivations, I thought, one day I'll get married. I want to give my wife, my family a better life, or whatever your motivation is. You got to find out. That's another conversation about your why, right? Yeah, if you don't have a strong why, you don't do anything. So, yeah. So that's what I would say is work out what it is, what your vehicle is, and then make sure that you nurture that investment vehicle as a priority and create as much for that as possible. Because a lot of people go, yeah, I love investment. Yeah, once I finish going out, buying the wine I want, living the lifestyle I want, if there's anything left, I'll always invest it. And how much do you think is left, Peter, from your experience? Not much.
Not much. Yeah, well, my personal experience, I'm a lot like you in that regard.
Yes.
I've always been a really good saver. I've worked since I was 12 years old.
Yeah.
And I think that it's those habits have carried through. I still save like anything, because I've always got this underlying fear in the back of my mind that one day I'm gonna really need it. I'm gonna be on hard times. So that's always there.
Yeah.
I really resonate with a lot of what you said, especially with the part about how when you purchased your first property, you had to be committed and dedicated to that. And because if you don't, you're wasting your money. You can't afford to pay that repayment at the end of the month, right? Yeah. So it's interesting how purchasing a property taught you, at least in part, to be responsible with your money. You had no choice. Right?
Exactly. Yeah. It's forced. It's a forced investment.
And sometimes it's the best way to do it. It's like you put yourself in that position, and you just sink or swim, and hopefully you swim.
You know what? People always do. They don't always do what they would like to do, but they always do what they have to do to survive. Yeah, so if it becomes survival, you find a way.
Yeah,
find a way, and that's what I did. I kept working, and and money just kept pumping in because I was trying to take the pressure away. So I was trying to put money into that mortgage.
Yeah, well done, done. Hats off to you. So get rich quick schemes in property. Like I'm on Facebook a bit and I see these pop up. It's like, pay for our course and we'll teach you how to buy 20 properties in 5 months, or join our session and we'll tell you where the next 3 top investment areas are. When you hear things like that, what comes to your mind, and what would you say to young people who might be thinking, yeah, I'm going to click that button and pay for that course? What do you think?
Yeah, so I've got too much experience. I mean, I know a lot about that question. First thing I'd say is just to be fair to the people providing some of those investment schemes. Some of them are actually people who are doing education around property investing, and they are putting you into a mentoring group with other people who are investing, and they're helping you to get through some of those fears and challenges. And I do know people that wouldn't have bought their first investment property had it not been for one of those groups. And then afterwards, they go off and they've got the knowledge and they go off and they buy more. That first investment may not have been the most effective, because quite often, the reason they can make the elaborate courses and things and they're doing all that is because they're making really good money out of the sale of those properties. And I guess there's a few things I don't like about it. One of them is that they tell you it doesn't matter what the property is. All that matters is it works in the mathematical equation. People go, oh, that makes sense, just with the mathematics. But it does matter what the property is and where it is, and it does matter.
Why is that? So, because
look, I had a staff member here, a receptionist, who was a lovely girl, and I won't say her name, but she came to me and she said, look, I want your advice. I went to a seminar and I bought this property, and she gave me a suburb somewhere, far away, and she goes, I just want to make sure you think it's okay. And I came back to her, and I'm going to give you the short version of the story, but I came back to her and said, look, it's okay, but I can get you the same property for $45,000 less in the same location. And she said, oh, but, I'm actually quite comfortable with the purchase. I said, oh, that's great. I said, how long would it take you to save $45,000? And she thought about it and she couldn't answer. I said, well, how much have you saved so far? She goes, $6,000. And they're helping me get the rest. I said, if I saw you walking off a cliff and you're going to fall off, would you want me to, and you were happy about it, would you want me to tell you or just let you walk? And she goes, oh, I want you to tell me. So I'm telling you, it's a bad idea to pay $40,000 more for a property than you have to, because your growth for the next 5 years is already gone. Anyway, in the end, she bought the property and she doesn't work here anymore, because I just didn't think that was a person that could responsibly make good decisions for themselves, let alone help others. So I think sometimes you got to be careful. And I think that Robert Kiyosaki wrote a book called Mind Your Own Business, which means that no one's going to care for your money as much as you. So you're better off getting educated. It's almost a lazy way. Others will do it, but no one's going to care about your particular money as much as you. So I think if you can use it as a vehicle to learn, even if you buy a property with that, it's okay. But I think what I've seen, the people who made a lot of money through property investing have ended up, doing it themselves quite often.
Yeah. And personally for yourself, are you more of a buy and hold, or do you, buy in an up and coming area and when it goes up in value, you sell it, nice. What's your investment strategy with regards to property?
Yeah. So look, I think that I see a lot of advertising out there, which is cool and sexy, positive property that teach you how to make cash flow out of property. I 100% disagree with that focus. The focus of property, where property is strong, is wealth creation in time. So I call it the get rich slow scheme. And if you start young, which hopefully you have, even if you don't, but every 10 years, you do get substantial growth in property. And because you can leverage the money, it's not all your money, unlike shares or other investment options, you can actually borrow often 80% or more from the bank. So if the property goes up 10%, it's actually 10% of 100%. So it's actually probably 50% of the money you actually put in. Do you know what I mean? So if you put 20,000 in and you borrowed 80,000, so you get 100,000, and it goes up 10% of 100, that's 10,000. So that's a 50% growth rate. You don't get that anywhere else because it's a safe investment vehicle. A bank will lend for it. Yeah. So I think a property get rich slow scheme is fast enough for me. I think that if you try and short circuit that, and people love these, and I get people coming to me all the time. They think I've got money, and they're like, "Do this, do that, do this." To me, a lot of that is like again, it's a shortcut thing. It's not wanting to get the delayed. Why wait 10 years? You can have it tomorrow, but you can also lose everything tomorrow.
Yeah.
That's the wrong psychology to me.
And that's one thing that, again, continually comes up in the conversations that I have with young people. They see property investment as a investment strategy for old people, right? That's something that old people invest in because they're into crypto, they're into drop shipping, they're into anything that they think that they're going to make quick money on, right?
Yes.
Whereas what you're saying is the get rich slow way is a much safer and surer, proven way to create wealth.
Yeah, and if you're trying to get cash flow through property, you need a lot of it, and it's almost impossible. You better make cash flow through a great job or business,
and property as a side hustle, right?
And property as a long-term wealth creation strategy. Because I've seen people who had amazing businesses, and look, one of them had a property development business, a builder, went under, but didn't invest in real estate. Now they've got nothing. So there's another builder who went under, but they invested in real estate. They've got millions of dollars of real estate they still own. The business is gone. So while you're doing your business or you're doing your job and you're great at your job, use that money to invest. And it's like planting a tree that grows over time, from a goose to a tree now, and the tree will deliver fruit and you can eat the fruit. So that's investing in real estate. So I think investing in real estate is a great vehicle as well as a great cash flow vehicle. I think trying to make it immediately positive cash flow, I have a lot of reservations around what they're doing, and I think it's high risk.
Yeah.
And I also think it's ineffective, and I think it's just a sexy way of marketing it because people are thinking, oh great, I can still have my cake, I can have my wine and do everything. It won't change my lifestyle, and it'll make me money. Of course, I'll invest. There's a reason why you're getting a property with that kind of cash flow. There's usually an issue with that property. And usually the issue is it won't grow. Or you're overpaying for it in the first place. There's something wrong, generally.
Okay, interesting. Success stories. What would you consider your biggest success story in your life?
Gosh, I have to say marrying my wife, if you ask it like that, because she might be listening. If I say anything else, I'm finished.
Mine's marrying my wife.
I've got my 20th wedding anniversary in a couple of weeks.
Oh, congratulations. So, what are you guys doing?
I've got to work that out. No, there's a few options coming together. But it's a big deal. I mean, that's really probably genuinely the one decision that makes the biggest difference in your life. Who's next to you, and whether your life becomes like a up and down, going round and round in circles, chasing each other's tail or fighting or whatever, or it becomes a team going forward together. It makes a huge difference, right?
100%. And from that resonates with me as a teacher, because when I speak to young people, they might be in relationships that seem, to me on the outside looking in, pretty toxic, right?
Yeah.
They're arguing all the time. Their goals aren't aligned. Their values aren't aligned.
Yes.
But the more I speak to people like yourself, the more you guys touch on how important it is to have a teammate as a partner.
Yes.
Right? As a wife, as a husband, that seems to be one of the underlying factors of success for a lot of successful people.
I think you've got to engage your brain when you're choosing a partner for life as well as your emotions, because I think as a man or woman, you can find attraction in different people, but the right partner choice, you got to use your brain as well. I want to give you another answer for that, which is more of a property answer, which is financially. I can tell you that I bought a development site I bought a little house that looked like a toilet block. It was a cement brick, very long and thin, in Kingston Park.
Oh, I used to go there when I was a kid with my family.
Right. Love the spot. Yeah. You walk down into the nature, down to the caravan park, down to the beach.
Caravan park, Kingston
and the sea cliff, the surf club's there.
Beautiful.
We were going to build our house there. That was going to be the dream location for our home. Ended up buying a house elsewhere, and so I decided to make that a development. And being young, I had these visions of rooftop decks and all this amazing stuff. Anyway, ended up in ERD court, which is where you're in court for approval with the council.
Right.
You know, so
you're like battling with the council.
yeah,
to get
yeah. So
something
we
approved, right?
we lined it up. You know, we had everything right, everything complied with the legislation and all that kind of thing. And the neighbours were there. So I've been here 50 years, and you're going to put 8 more bins on the street, and we don't want it there. So it was back and forth, but we had all the right numbers. In the end, it cost me, I think, $60,000 or $70,000, and I lost because they decided that it was out of character with the area, whatever happened. So very painful exercise. Anyway, and I thought, wow, that's a big lesson. You got to go with the stream. Don't try and swim against the stream. You're going to get tired. You're only one person. And financially, there's a lot of money at that time for me. Wow, it was a huge loss. Anyway, a few years later, I got made an offer for that property. It was a big property. Someone just was their dream house, and we made almost $500,000.
Wow.
Right. So, which reminds me of one thing, and that's a really good thing. So that was my best experience. Like far out. Bought a house, had stuffed it up completely. In every way. Like bought it for living in, ended up buying something else, didn't live in it. Tried to make a development site, completely failed, and then lost massively in court. All that money to consultants and everything. But in the end, it was a win, right? So I went to a talk, and the woman was a CEO of Netball SA, and she said one thing, and now it seems obvious, but at the time, like she said, you never know if something in your life is good or bad until the fullness of time. I thought, that's freaking genius. So when I looked at my life, you go, far out, I thought it was terrible, but then end up being excellent. So sometimes what you think is a fail is actually a success. And what you think is a great success, actually, you might have succeeded by winning the pokies, and then that made you a gambler, and then it made you fail. So success might be the opposite. So you got to look at the long-term outcome, not the short-term. That's my message.
Yeah, and that reminds me of a couple of things. One quote that my good friend told me was that every lesson worth learning costs money, which I think that there's an element of truth in that. And also it helps to add perspective, right? When you go through those difficult situations and you're thinking, okay, well, what lessons can I learn from this? And hold on a second, there might be some positive outcome in the future, right? That can stop you from being overwhelmed by the substantial, stress or anxiety that losing 60 grand for a lot of people, that could crush people, right? So that perspective is so important. Victor, I'd just like to say thank you very much for having me on and having a chat with us. And a lot of what you've talked about is really going to resonate with the audience. So on behalf of the audience, thank you again. Thanks everyone for listening. If you want to reach out to Refined Real Estate for all your real estate needs, please look them up on the net. And if you want to know more about what I do, please visit www.primefbs.com. Thank you.